when he did this, I was still acting and being subject to a parliamentary inquiry.
Welcome to the Digital Amateur Television Experimenters Night. This is VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania.
So nothing like a baptism of fire.
Amateur radio is a worldwide hobby that has many different aspects. Digital television is just one of the many modes and areas that are covered. Maybe you're interested in becoming involved in the DATV Experimenters Night.
I had to look after this.
You realise that you do not have to be a radio amateur or need any ATV equipment to participate anywhere in the world. Also participate in the night by coming up to the Queen's Domain club rooms. Yes, right on top of the Queen's Domain in the heritage-listed Coast Wireless Station. You never know, we might get you in front of the camera or behind doing one of the many roles during the night. We get underway with our program on a Wednesday night from 7:30 p.m. local time. We'll see you soon. This is VK7 OTC.
Okay, this is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania with our DATV Experimenters Night, and I've got Rex Moncur VK7MO in the studio. Hello, Rex.
Hello, Justin.
How are you going?
Good.
And I have Rex in the studio for a very, very special reason. I have actually, we would have. Those people who are WIA members would have received their amateur radio magazine for volume 90, number 2 for 2022. And this particular edition is a focus on test and measurement. So I thought, oh, fantastic, that's great. And I started looking through it, and there were a number of articles that are associated with Rex
and VK7
and VK7. In fact, it's a bit of a VK7 volume. This particular edition, and the one that probably jumped out at me the most was there is a wonderful article written by Peter Wolfenden VK3RV, who is the WIA historian. Which is titled Unsung Pioneers of TV Technology in Australia Part 1, Secrets, Shocks and Surprises Beating the Big Boy Broadcasters. And the thing that jumped out at me was, because I recognised your father.
Did you? What?
Because I've seen those pictures when you gave us that presentation. And I realised, reading on, it says, lens with camera, Phyl, the most televised woman in Australia, who is your mother.
That's right.
And your father, and an unknown radio reporter in 1949. So I just thought I'd show this, and then I contacted Rex, and I said, oh, can we get you into the studio and I'll get here in a minute. That's a bit better. There we go. So it was this particular picture that jumped out at me. So tell us more, Rex.
Okay. probably have to go back to about 1936 when my dad first saw television in the United States.
Okay.
And he was, he must have been, he actually went around the United States in 1936 with a handful of QSL cards.
Okay.
And hams generally looked after him everywhere.
Okay.
And he got invited to ham clubs, and they asked him questions about kangaroos jumping down the streets and all of that sort of stuff. Anyway, he came to a place where there was a guy had television working, a ham, and my dad's eyes opened, and this guy says, well, if you're interested in television, I've got an old one in the shed.
An old one? Okay.
and this was a flying disc one with actual multiple lenses, and I've still got the disc, by the way.
Okay. Oh no, you showed that at the presentation. You brought that along.
Yes, that's
with
right.
With all the lenses around the outside.
That's right.
Yes. Okay.
Anyway, the ham said to Dad, "You can have this," and Dad said, "Oh, there wouldn't be room in the car for it." Anyway, they had dinner, and they put Dad up for the night, and in the morning the guy said, "I got it in your car," and he hacked this thing out of its lovely wooden case and put the chassis and everything in his car. When he carted it around the rest of the states, but when he got to to going on the ship, he couldn't carry the thing back, so he pulled out all what he thought was most useful out of it, the PE cell and the flying
unique
disc,
things,
flying disc and the valves and stuff. Then when he got back to Australia, the customs wanted to charge him some inordinate amount for the valves, which they recognised.
Okay.
But they let him have the PE cell and the flying disc and stuff.
Yep.
So that's all he finished up with out of this whole event. I remember seeing the PE cell, but I don't know where it is now.
Yeah.
But I do have the disc, which I think is probably a very
historic item.
That's right.
Well and truly.
Now, as a result of that, he actually built his own flying spot TV fairly soon after.
Okay.
And he actually built it such that the receiver and the transmitter were on the same shaft, rotating, which meant it was perfectly in sync.
Well and truly.
And he was able to transmit messages, but he never got round to actually putting it on the air in that form.
Yep. Okay.
And then World War II came along, and during World War II, they five BP1 oscilloscopes,
Tubes.
cathode ray tubes,
Yep.
became available, and fairly soon after that, there was an article in QST which he copied and built a TV transmitter and receiver, which he is in this photo.
Yes. Okay.
Now, and he actually had this working, but only closed circuit because the PMG wouldn't allow him to put TV signals on the air.
These broadband signals.
And he used to show it at the exhibition buildings in Melbourne, where the WIA had a display at one end, a big display of amateur radio.
You had a photo of that.
I did.
Yeah. It was the stage area.
That's
it was
right.
The whole stage area.
That's right, and the WIA had that, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
And he used to play games with people where he'd say, "You put your face in front of here, and if you're quick enough, go over to the other side of the stage, and you might see yourself." And of course, never happened. But
I love it.
Now moving forward to last year sometime,
yes,
I had a phone call from Peter Wolfenden saying he was doing this article on amateur television.
Definitely.
And
Here.
what interested me is he was quoting my mother and a little story about TV. And this is something I was never aware of.
Okay.
And it became, when I started looking into it, there's a VK6 who's put every old version of AR on the
Scanned,
the web.
Yes.
And when I looked into it, I found my mum actually wrote a column called the YL column in AR.
What, YL Corner?
Uh,
YL Corner, I think it is.
Yeah, what was it? YL Corner.
Yeah.
And she wrote that for about 2 years.
Okay.
Now, the thing that really interested me, which has nothing to do with Peter's article, is there was an article in there that she wrote called "What is a Harmonic?" And that was clearly about me as a from the age of about 3 or 4 up to 15, talking about how I was interested in having a radio, and I knew nothing about it. So
I love it.
the only thing that she obviously wrote, well, she wrote this in December 57, so I was 15, and then she extrapolated beyond that and sort of described how I would have learnt the Morse and embarrassed my dad, none of which turned out to be true, because I was hopeless at Morse, and it was a real struggle to get the 14 words a minute, but so that's now, in terms of the actual article, I think I've probably covered everything at the moment, but yeah, unless you had any questions, Justin.
No. Well, it goes on. It goes on talking about the technology of the times and the block diagram that appears below about and this is a 1929 cathode ray television receiver. We're talking about 1929 now. This is nearly 30 years before 20 years before Australia got television.
Oh yes, we didn't get till 56.
So I just this is phenomenal. This was being played with a whole decades before we ever have it.
Yeah. And I mean, in the UK and in the USA, there was sort of commercial versions of television in the 1930s.
Okay. Yes.
But mainly based on flying spot, little lenses and all that.
Low resolution,
well,
30 lines and all of that sort of thing.
Well, if I look at this that I've got, it's got 3 rings of 13 lenses. Now, so I think at the most, that's 39.
Yeah, 39 lines.
Lines.
So,
yeah.
0 dear.
So, not really high resolution.
No.
I should say, when my dad built his, the first thing he ever saw was he had a little black bit of cardboard and a hole in it. And he used to ask my mum to say whether she could see
the image.
The image.
In fact, there is an image
on the TV, and yeah, that sort of thing. That wasn't my dad's one, but
no.
And the final test was, at one stage, he cut the side of the hole out, so it changed the hole to a C. And,
okay.
And my mum recognised it without knowing what it was, and that was the test that proved that television worked.
You could recognise an image. You could
recognise the letter C.
Yes.
which is a fairly low data rate.
Just a little. Yes.
Yeah.
The S across the Atlantic. Yes.
All right. Well, that probably covers that article.
Cool. I just this is another picture from Jeff Hughes VK3KWB. This was his one of his used to demonstrate TV in Melbourne. You can see the transmitter.
It's a very similar system. I think they probably both copied the QST article.
Yep. So this is this a like a receiving?
That's right.
CRT, but that's the transmitting.
That's the iconoscope.
Okay.
And that was a 1 BP one.
Right.
Which was effectively the monitor to show you what you were actually seeing when you were.
Okay.
Jeff, by the way, I had some experience with Jeff when I first got my licence, and I moved up to 1296.
Okay.
And he used to live on Mount Dandenong. Well, he had a weekender on Mount Dandenong.
Okay.
With a brilliant location.
Wow, truly.
And I couldn't get my 1296 meg system to work, but I drove up outside his house, and we completed a QSO over about 20 metres.
Okay.
And then I tuned everything up, and then moved a bit further down the hill, and a bit further down the hill, and ultimately got down to, I think, 30 miles, and claimed the first Victorian 1296 meg record.
There you go. I love it.
With Jeff, yes.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Now, there's a range of other things in this magazine. What would you like to do next, Rex?
Okay, well, there is an article which is a book review on Dick Smith's adventures.
His autobiography.
His autobiography.
Yes. By Andy Kerr,
Yes.
VK3AAK.
And this occurred to me that he probably would have written about his trip to Antarctica, which I was very closely involved in. So today, only today, I bought the book to see what
Okay.
to see what he actually said.
I did buy it when it came out, and I have actually read it. So
Okay, well,
great read.
I think it's worth showing that bottom part of the
Hang on, I can. So you've got something to refer to.
Yeah, and he's got
on the cover of both the inside and the front cover and the back cover. There is a big global map of their travels on their various around the world trips.
Right. Now, there is a line that goes from Hobart down to Casey Station in Antarctica.
Yep.
And then it goes right across from Casey to Murney to Mawson and Davis, and even to the Japanese station Sawyer.
Yep.
And it also goes from Casey via Vostok to the South Pole, and McMurdo to the South Pole, and then from there across to a place called Patriot Hills,
Yep.
and then out. Now,
Up into South America.
South America. Now, this was part of Dick's wanting to circumnavigate the world in
A helicopter.
In a helicopter, but he came to the conclusion that he couldn't do it in a helicopter. Flying from Hobart to Antarctica, that's about 3,000 kilometres, and not many helicopters were going to do that. In fact, none.
He talks about his specially modified helicopters, where he chucks everything out and puts extra fuel tanks in.
Yeah. But so he actually did this part of the trip in a Twin Otter, which was modified such that all of the seats were removed and fuel tanks
was filled up with fuel.
So it's a sort of flying bomb.
Correct.
Now, at this stage, I was acting director of the Antarctic Division, and I had a lot of other things on my plate, but Dick is one of these people, when he's got something he wants to do...
It's very hard to stop him.
That's right. And I got a message that the Prime Minister was supporting Dick's project. And so I...
Re-drop everything and
Yeah.
help. Well,
he didn't put that many demands on me personally, but I didn't really know exactly what he was going to do.
Yeah,
and
okay.
the story as he conveyed it to me was he was just going to go down to Antarctica to our stations, and he was happy to do some science, and if we'd provide the fuel. And this all seemed to make sense, and I made all the arrangements for that side of things, and I remember standing by in Hobart where we had a HF station at the Antarctic Division to keep in contact with him when he and a fellow named Giles Kershaw, who was an Antarctic pilot, a skilled person.
And he talks about him in the book.
Unfortunately, Giles passed away in a helicopter accident about a year or two later. But, and both Giles's partner and Dick Smith's wife, Pip, sat with me at the HF station in Hobart. Fingers crossed, waiting for them to traverse all this distance. Now, in the book, he makes the point that at one stage they weren't sure which direction they were flying, and they were looking like having to ditch in the Southern Ocean, and all sorts of problems. I wasn't aware of any of that at the time. I guess they were not wanting to communicate that back to their wives and partners.
No, certainly not.
But
that's one of many of those situations if you read the book.
Yes. Well, this is the problem of having adventurers wanting to go to places like Antarctica. And Dick makes in his book a fair bit of criticism of the Americans on the grounds that they weren't prepared to help him in any way, not even provide weather forecasts. And I think I should give a picture of the situation so people understand where the Americans were coming from. And the problem is, the Americans essentially are the only country that have got any capacity to rescue anyone in Antarctica. And as more and more adventurers went to Antarctica, they were having to divert their program all the time to rescue people. And the reality is, you commit yourself to a scientific program where people expect to go to different places and do their science and so forth. And to optimise the science, you try and fit in as much as you can. You just don't have spare time to go off helping and rescuing people. And the Americans got to the point where they made a policy decision that they would not assist anybody to go to Antarctica just as a private adventurer. And I understood that, but I was sort of had my hands up the back of my head because I also had a Prime Minister that wanted
to support Dick.
So this was a little balancing trick. And at that stage, I was not aware that Dick wanted to go to the American station at South Pole. Perhaps because he knew that I would then have to talk to the Americans and they would say no way. So anyway, he did this little exercise around our stations, and then all of a sudden I found that he had flown from Casey to McMurdo, the American station, and what was worse was he couldn't get fuel from McMurdo because they weren't going to support him.
Correct.
But there was a Greenpeace base next to McMurdo, and he'd somehow done a deal with them to provide him with fuel. But the reason the Greenpeace were there is we were negotiating the Madrid Protocol to the Antarctic Treaty.
Yep.
And they were trying to demonstrate their interest in protecting the Antarctic environment. And some of these people would go to the dump where the American station put all their rubbish,
yep,
and then cart it back and leave it in the middle of the American station to demonstrate all of the rubbish that the Americans were introducing to Antarctica.
Yes.
So the Americans were not at all enamoured with having Greenpeace
Anywhere near the place.
Anywhere near it. What then happened, and I was not aware of it, is the deal he did with Greenpeace is that he would fly two of their people to the American station at South Pole so they could inspect it. And, well, the American operations manager really went off his brain to me that I had organised all this to happen.
Yeah. You'd allowed.
And as well as this, he had written ANARI on the side of his aircraft, Australian National Antarctic Research Expeditions, and he did a bit of science for us with ice radars, but the reality is we had no control over over what he was doing. Anyway, he flew these people to South Pole, and he left a box with some supplies, but the box he had got from Greenpeace, and it had Greenpeace labels on it. And the Americans were really upset about the fact that, first of all, that they were not keen on him even visiting South Pole,
yes,
but they did let him in and give him a cup of coffee, and according to his books, that they were not really very friendly at all.
Yes, it was a bit of a cold reception.
But effectively, it let two Greenpeace march all over their station, and anyway, this box had Greenpeace on it, and
Greenpeace logos on all the sides. He talks about this.
For reasons that I am not sure, the Americans gave them an instruction to their South Pole station to spray paint out the Greenpeace. Now, I heard that in the process, they brought it inside the building because you can't do any spray painting in the wind outside. And they finished up getting spray paint all over their carpet and everything else in the process of following this instruction. And the operations manager was very unhappy. And the other reason he was very unhappy was Dick arrived on their Thanksgiving Day, which is a very important day to Americans.
Well, truly.
And particularly down south, where people are away from their families, they celebrate it with a big dinner, and everybody's looked after and so forth, and the last thing they wanted was
to entertain two Greenpeace people and Dick.
And Dick Smith. So this put us very much offside with the Americans, and I think it had an impact on our relationship that was not good on a few occasions after that.
Okay.
It's repaired now. But,
yeah.
So that is another side to this story.
To this particular story, and that's the autobiography.
Yes.
By Andy Kerr, VK2, aka AAK. So it is. Apart from that, it is quite a good read. If you grew up if you grew up throughout the 70s and the 80s, there are so many things that jump out of the book of him starting Dick Smith Electronics, and so many people, I think, relate to Dick Smith Electronics and buying components and buying equipment from Dick Smith and all of this sort of stuff, and how he actually built that multi-billion-dollar empire, and it is a multi-billion-dollar empire. So it is quite a good read, but there's certainly there's always another side to the story, well and truly. So, but anyway, that's his autobiography. I did write in here because he goes into a little bit.
Did you get a signed copy?
No.
That's amazing, because I only went in there today, and
Oh, it's a signed copy. Well, there you go, Rex. There you go. So where did you get it from?
in what's the place in Collins Street?
Fuller's?
Fuller's.
Yeah, I got it from Dimmicks. So, no, mine's not signed.
I suspect he did a
launch or something.
at Fuller's and signed a whole lot, and now they're just selling them off. So I finished up the side.
Well, there you go. But he goes into his success. What he considers to be his success secrets. If you read through the book, and I actually wrote them down, because he talks about, you always take advice from subject matter experts.
Yes.
So that's his first sort of success secret. You then copy what are successful business models, and he talks about going to Lafayette in the US when he was thinking about starting Dick Smith Electronics, and he literally, a bit like Antarctica, bowls up at Lafayette.
Yes.
And sort of basically says, well, tell me your business model.
Yeah, and they told him.
and they actually.
What was Lafayette? Something like Ham Radio Shack?
It was they produced radios.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, he ended up becoming the agent for it in Australia.
Right.
Because he started off in car radios.
He did.
That was his the first business that he was involved with. So, copy successful business models, and the third one is surround yourself with the people who know and are successful in that particular field. And that is, all of these are reoccurring themes through all of the things he does, where it's the car radio, it's Dick Smith Electronics, it's then Australian Geographic, it's etc. etc. So he uses those three success factors throughout the book, it brought back lots of interesting memories. So of my growing up. And I do have, I should have brought them with me. I do still have a couple of Dick Smith catalogues, which I kept, because in the back, or it moved to the middle at some stage, but in the back was a data section that I used to, as soon as the catalogue ran out for that year, I would rip the back out of the catalogue and keep the data section, staple it together and keep the data section, and then the next catalogue would come out, and that would have an updated data section, so you would keep that. So yeah, so anyway, so very good. Now, that's a fantastic segue, because just at the end of this particular article, there is a wonderful ad for the virtual AGM and conference program, which is being streamed from down here in Hobart, and one of the speakers at the virtual conference in the afternoon is, surprise, one Mr. Rex Moncur, if I come up a bit, who will be talking about his experiences as director of the Antarctic Division between 1988 and 1999, the challenges, the good and the challenging. So maybe we might get
Well, I wasn't. While this had its challenges, I didn't regard this as one of the disastrous challenges.
No.
But there are many disastrous challenges which I'll talk about.
And we might even get some photos.
You will get some photos. Yes.
So that's the second and third thing in the AR magazine. Now, if we head to the back, there is the microwave report.
Yes. Okay.
Which this is the take us through what we're looking at, Rex.
We did talk about this in an earlier Experimenters night, but
We did.
in January there was a potential opening. In fact, you can see that Hepburn chart there on the right, and there's some red and some yellow and some green that goes all the way from Tasmania to New Zealand. And while I had completed a contact from Tasmania to New Zealand the year before, this time I tried to organise Richard to be involved in it as well. Richard had tried to be involved in the one the year before, but he got up to Mount Wellington and then realised his laptop was still at home. So,
We've all had that experience.
yeah. But this time, the special things about this were that I operated from home at 320 metres and Richard operated from partway up Mount Wellington at about 665 metres.
Yep.
And Richard, using a smaller dish, got signals about 9 dB stronger than I did. And so this gave us the idea that Richard was closer to the duct. Now when we analysed the duct, it's a bit hard to see on this, but there is a big duct up there at about 1,000 to 1,200 metres.
Yep.
But there's a little duct in there which is just at the height that Richard was, and there's another little one down there about the height I was.
There you go.
And we had sort of concluded that these little ducts might be the reasons why we had propagation. I should say that since I wrote that article, I'm less convinced of that.
Oh, okay. Tell us more.
I've been monitoring a whole lot of ducts between Hawaii and California.
Yes.
Where we have got a nice set of data for July last year.
Okay.
And there are many occasions where signals are getting through. They've got a whisper transmitter set up.
Okay.
There are many occasions where the whisper signals get through and neither station is in the duct. And what you can say is there is always a strong duct, but you don't actually have to be in it.
How's that work?
Don't know. Now, in theory, you can think of a few ways that it works. For instance, if you beam a long way away, you could enter the duct at a very low angle.
Okay.
Now,
yes.
it turns out you can only really enter a duct with, depending on how strong it is, at no more than about half a degree.
Okay.
So if you're well below the duct, to get within half a degree,
that's kilometres away.
You've got to be a long way away. And what that does cost you is it costs you inverse square law until you hit the duct.
Yep.
Once you get into the duct, it's only inverse with distance.
Yep.
So that's one big loss.
Okay.
Some of the literature suggests that there is also a capture area loss because you beam, most of your beam when you're so far away,
It's going somewhere else.
Going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it basically says over these, if you've got a beam very low, there's a negligible amount of signal going to get to the other end. And yet, it is getting to the other end.
So what sort of antennas are they using at like the Hawaii end or the California
Well, this
end?
is all being done at 2 metres, which means their beamwidths are very wide, and the amount of energy that would get
wasted, basically,
into the duct, if the duct's 100 kilometres away to get to meet the...
would be nothing.
Well, that's right. So, I think there is a lot more to this than I understand at the moment.
Okay.
Most ham literature just talks about the fact that, you know, you have a duct, and if you're both in the duct you get strong signals and stuff like that. But I actually suspect it will be very rare for hams to be in the duct.
Correct.
Because most hams are just working at sort of sea level and stuff. And when I think about it all, my world record contacts on 10 gigs across the Western Australia, I was down at sort of 80 metres up at point...
the Trans-Tasman one from New South Wales to Roger.
Yes, that's right. I was well below the duct there. And from... what's the cape up at the north-east of Tassie?
Cape...
Portland.
Portland, yes.
Yeah. Well, the duct was about 300 metres and I was about 80. And the guy at the other end was about 150.
Yeah, okay.
So...
Lots more to this picture.
I think there's a lot more to learn about how you can get into ducts and so forth, particularly from below. Now, for the Hawaii-California path, there's a little bit of history in that people who've actually used this path and driven up the mountain trying to find the ducts say that as soon as you get above the duct, the signal disappears.
Yeah, okay.
So it may not be a problem. If you're below the duct, but
that's interesting. So you can't fire into a duct from above.
But that's
by
right.
the sound of it.
Yeah. Now, contrary to that, the professional literature tells me if you're above the duct, it'll cost you 6 dB, but if you're below the duct, it'll cost you 10 dB or more, which is the opposite of what we're finding.
Hang on, so that's better if you're above the duct?
Yes. So, anyway, this article which we've got in AR is also in Dubis, which we haven't got yet because it takes about 3 months for Dubis to arrive.
Correct.
But my friend who did the analysis of these ducts, W3SZ, he has got his Dubis, and immediately before our article, there is another article by a German, a very mathematically scientific article, not really related to actual ducting.
Okay, so theoretical.
Very theoretical, and he claims that the general formula for ducting isn't quite right, and he's now offered an improved formula.
Okay.
So I think there's still things going on. I haven't yet tried to feed his improved formula into our practical results.
Okay.
But
watch this space.
Well, I'm hoping that we will be able to explore the Hawaii-California path in July this year.
In the not too distant future.
Yes.
And I think I overheard you saying that you've shipped the goods.
I have shipped the antenna and the mounting hardware.
Okay.
I'm going to take what I call the head unit, the transmitter, with me in my carry-on package because it's a bit delicate and I want to look after it.
Okay.
I am going to take the risk that my IC9700 and a whole lot of other things are going to go in my in-hold baggage
Your hardened 9700.
That's right.
It now has a aluminium frame around it.
Yes. So the first problem is to get everything to Hawaii. The next is get it there in a working condition, and then be able to assemble all of it and make it work, which we'll test out with EME.
Yep. Okay.
I've got to build things like a cradle so that I can carry it in the back of a vehicle without having to assemble it every time and stuff like that. And my hope is that I'll be able to drive up and down a mountain and optimise my position to the duct and see whether, in fact, we get much stronger signals in the middle of the duct. And I'll be taking 432 with me as well, as the means of tracking where the optimum height of the duct is. And then if 432 is working solidly, we'll swap over to 10 gigs. Yeah.
Okay. Good luck.
Yeah. You sort of start doing probabilities and you think, probability of getting the equipment there, the probability of it working, the probability of actually assembling it all and being able to drive up the mountain, oh yeah, it's about 10% chance. And then the probability that the guys at the other end's equipment will all work is about 10%. It's only 10% by 10%'s a very low probability that anything's going to happen. And I haven't even taken account of whether there's a duct there or not yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So I do need the good luck.
Correct.
My experience though, whenever I've tried these world record stuffs, good luck's always happened.
There you go. There you go. The gods have smiled upon you.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's fantastic, Rex.
Okay.
That is very good. Now, if you can send Richard in, that'd be fantastic. And thank you very much. That was. I have to say, I mentioned this to you earlier. The fact that both this is a pretty unique situation, in that we've actually got a mother and a father, and in the same, or at least contributing to the same hobby.
Yes.
And we've also got the son here.
Yes.
So I just...
We haven't got the mother and father here.
Oh, no,
they passed away a long time ago.
I understand that, but it's just a unique situation to have both mother and father in amateur radio for a start.
Yes. My mother never got a call sign.
Okay.
She did the course.
Yep.
And passed the regulations, but the theory in those days was pretty heavy because you had to do
the essays.
Essay style.
Yeah.
And she found that too hard, but because she wanted to do something that my dad was interested in, she was a stenographer, she took on the job of writing a column which
even included you.
Called the YL Corner. Yes.
And your rising fame in amateur radio.
Yeah.
In one of them.
She sort of got it roughly right, didn't she?
Definitely. Not sure about the Morse code though.
No.
Oh,
okay.
Cool. Thank you, Rex. All right, this is VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters night. We'll just do a little bit of a reset, and I'll get Richard VK7ZBX into the studio because there's a few things. The next thing in the magazine, it seems to be a bit of a VK7 magazine this time round, but. Come in, Richard. Come in. So I was just mentioning that there is seems to be a bit of a VK7 amateur radio magazine this edition.
Wow, always good to see.
And welcome, Richard. VK7ZBX. How you doing?
I'm good. Just out there building
bookshelf.
Bit of bookshelving.
A very nice IKEA bookshelf for our library. So and actually a big thank you to Shirley VK7HSC up from Sulphur Creek, who donated a whole bucket load of books to us from Meet the Voice. So
You're going to have a bookcase, you've got to have books put in it.
exactly. Now, I'll just whiz over to the microwave section of the Amateur Radio magazine again.
Okay.
So
That's
this
a pretty
is
tidy looking dish.
that's a fantastic looking dish. And the accompanying equipment. So this is we just covered the VKZL contact,
Yep.
which is outlined in here.
Which is pretty cool.
Which is very cool.
Thanks to Rex for his diligent, and the other guys for obviously their research and cool stuff as well. Like.
So, and we finished off by saying there's a lot more to this picture than meets the eye. So,
Yes,
so
I think it's opened the proverbial can of worms.
So, take us through this article, because it's.
Look,
I'll zoom in here a little bit because it shows the impressive bit.
it's talking to sort of David. He sort of suggested that I sort of just send a couple of photos and just sort of pen a bit of a story.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the power of social media and whatever. After a little bit of an interview on
ABC.
the ABC, and it's amazing how you send emails to people and go, oh yes, just listen to your interview, or it's just watching your video. And it's like, so look, I'm really
You're
sort
famous,
of quite,
mate. You're famous. You're
mate,
famous.
I'm sort of pretty sort of impressed really that like I haven't really sort of done anything that flash, but it is nice. I feel pretty chuffed that it works, but
That's pretty flash.
yeah,
That's
and it works. But look, it was really sort of nice to be able to. I feel really sort of quite proud to be sort of included in AR magazine, you know,
Well, true.
along with those sort of the calibre of those guys. But since then, I've met a few people and talked to a few people that are sort of on the edge of doing the same thing. So,
okay. And you've provided them with encouragement.
Yeah. I think we've all been at the point where we just want to tip the whole lot into the river. You know, tools thrown in the air and sort of things uttered, and it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
But I think that's a bit of passion. You need to sort of have a bit of that. But
Well,
I've spoken to a couple of guys, and
true.
I think hopefully they'll take a bit of that and go on board. And I think one of the guys, I'll call him out, John VK5 Oscar India, who's
Very close.
He's really close, and he was listening for when I tried to work the guys at Stanford, and we were cross polarised. We discovered at the end, so I couldn't hear them, and neither could he. So he felt a lot better when he realised that he couldn't hear either.
No, that's.
But I
spot
think
on.
he's had a little issue with his transmitter, which is a little bit sad. But I think he's right on the cusp of joining us. So
Okay.
it's good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, look, it's all come together really well. Rex is really happy and surprised / impressed at the sun noise figure, so it's obviously working pretty much as per it should be. So,
As theory would suggest. Well and truly.
which is pretty good. So 12 dB sun noise is pretty.
And in fact, what I'll do here, just take us through. This is the arrangement that you've got at home, obviously.
Correct. Yes.
So you've got this on a. Take us through the trolley and the arrangement.
So the frame, it's an RHS frame. It's sort of about 1,500 odd, 1,200 odd square.
Okay.
And the main sort of axle, or the actual main pivoting part or rotating part, is actually a Land Cruiser hub, which is in underneath that cover.
Okay.
Which is a nice substantial sort of bit of mounting.
Which is this cover
That's
here.
sort of in under there.
Yep.
So that big cover sort of covers a bit of a multitude of sins.
Right.
A big ugly sort
That's
of.
right.
Sort of where a freewheeling hub should bolt
Yeah.
on.
Yep.
But what it also does is it sort of serves to provide a bit of a water shield for the absolute encoder that's at the end of the shaft, which is at the very bottom.
Okay.
So if water sort of was to fall onto that, it should theoretically should drip off to the sides as opposed to running underneath.
Okay.
And it also provides a mechanism. I've set a piece of wood across there, which the bottom of it's flat and the top of it's cut to the same profile as the dish. So when I transport it, I can bring it down and sort of lock it together.
Cool. And it's this ring that actually
rotates.
Rolls
correct, yeah.
around on. There's rollers on
So
each
there's
of
4
those.
little rollers, because when the guys rolled it, they did a really good job of rolling it, but it's fairly difficult to keep something like that 100% flat and true.
Well and truly.
So those little rollers just basically sort of force it to run sort of reasonably true.
Okay, so that's pulled down onto
Yeah,
those
it's pulled
rollers.
down on those. So that keeps it pretty good. There's it's a bit hard to see with that angle, but yeah, so there's just a couple of bearings at the bottom pivot point of the dish sort of sits on.
So that would be behind here?
Behind the air, correct.
Yeah, where these arms go up.
That's right. When we originally sort of conceived the idea, we sort of, that was the way we wanted to do it, but we didn't understand anything about gate geometry.
We do have the other person on the line. So
Mr. Mars.
Murray is is watching. So.
And look, we had lots of people offer some really sort of good advice in the early days, and we just thought it'd be easy. Like, oh, you just put an actuator on there and just go from 0 to 90. Oh, hang on a minute, that's not going to work. And you know, you get lots of people that say, oh, that's never going to work. And you go, oh, well, it doesn't look like it's going to work. And then I had an epiphany driving through my gates that night.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there, and I pressed the button on my electric gates, and the gates open, and I went, well, they go 0 to 90.
And they're only little short
little
actuators.
So that sort of led me down a bit of a rabbit hole of
Okay.
of gate geometry, and hence then I spoke with Murray the next day and sort of drew. In fact, I was away for work in Burnie, and as luck would have it, my son was also in Burnie. He'd come over from Adelaide to do some work at one of the mines up there, and we sort of caught up and had a few sherbets, and he's a bit of a geek as well, so we chatted about so we went down to the local news agency and bought some sort of quite arty crafty, like little pinwheel things and some scissors, and we actually made a model. We sort of, roughly guessed the size, and we thought, well, okay, if we need to pivot this much, and
what do you have to do?
What do you have to do? So we actually made a model by going this much. We were able to go from 0 to 90. We're sweet. All we've got to do now is make that in steel.
Okay.
So we did it a bit more scientifically and looked at some of the trigonometry, and it's quite involved. But it's amazing how much of a small distance between the points can make such
needing much higher forces and all sorts of stuff.
That's right. So I think the next weekend, Murray was pretty excited, and we were up at home sort of cutting, and we just basically got some bits of scrap steel and tacked some bits on, and we actually got sick and tired of waiting for the actuator to go from 1 metre to 2 metres. So we ended up just basically cutting 2 bits of steel, one at the retracted length and one at the extended length, and go, okay, let's pull the dish back, yep, try that in there, okay, push it over there, yep, oh, sweet, it's not quite, let's go.
Okay.
And it worked.
Empirical measuring and adjustment.
It was quite a mix of quite science and quite guessometry. So,
Okay.
But that was one of the biggest bridges to cross, if you like. That was sort of, and originally we intended, I really wanted it to be able to track satellites.
Yeah. Okay. So 180 degrees.
Well, sort of at least 0 to 90 and 360.
And then 360. Yeah.
But look, and I sort of have to. Well, Rex was dead right. You'll never get enough system that hasn't got enough backlash. Yeah, sure we will. So we tried lots of iterations of gearboxes, and
I remember that there were a number of them on the floor of your workshop.
You sort of get all excited. You get these, that 100 to 1 gearbox we bought out of China with a stepper motor on it was like even a few of the fitter sort of friends, that sort of, oh gee, that's hardly got any backlash. But by the time you plonk a 1.8 metre dish on, it's like clonk, 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 clonk.
Once you put that on it.
So, Rex sort of sat down one night, we had coffee, and he's like, don't know why I just don't use an actuator. He goes, it'll just... And, well, it uses an actuator, what more can I say? So. Having said that, we didn't know that slew drives existed. And I think slew drives are a bit of a game changer.
Yeah. They're also a bit of a game changer to the wallet as well. Yes.
Well, none of this stuff's cheap. And it's like he just goes through brownie points.
And if you were to add up the amount of time that you've spent.
Wow.
But you have ended up with something that is very impressive.
Look, I'm really happy. I was only talking to Rex the other night, and I've just got a little bit more work to do now to the case that actually holds the tracking unit.
Okay.
and then I've got enough cable to make like some looms,
Oh, okay.
and just
okay.
label some cables so that basically, when you want to play EME,
Yep.
you can just like wheel it out to this spot for moonrise and this spot to moon, for moonset,
Yeah.
and calibrate off these known points and just run the leads out, red B and C onto the red thing, yellow onto the yellow, run it back to the rig, plug it in, turn the tracker on,
Bang.
and it works. At the moment, it's a bit of a science experiment. It's like, oh, I need a B and C to B and C. Oh, that one will do, and yeah, it's all a bit.
Okay.
But
Okay.
But no, look, I'm sort of super looking forward to using it a bit more.
Fantastic.
So,
Okay, now, thank you, Richard.
that's okay.
And very impressed. And it can be read in your AR magazine. So, along with all the other VK7 related articles. So now, John Moyle Memorial Field Day.
Yes.
A bit of a wrap up, and we've got Muzz online, and we've got you. Now, what did you do for the John Moyle Memorial Field Day?
Well, I was part of the team that went to our usual DX spot on Mount Wellington, which is about 400 metres down from the summit by the road. Yeah, it's on the side. She's got a really good outlook to the north, to the east. Not so good for the south, to the boys in Blackman's Bay, as we discovered, snug, etc. But yeah. So we set up our field day van, and we set up with bands from 6 metres to 10 gigs, except for 5.7.
Yep.
I
should have given you the.
Oh, did Peter have one? Oh no, yeah. Well, could have
we could. Yeah. Anyway, didn't even think about that. Anyway.
So look, we worked a few guys locally. Pardon me. We had a couple of issues on the higher bands.
Okay.
And look, because we don't do the contacts from north south that much.
Yep.
It's hard to know who maybe his gear's not quite 100% on the day.
Yeah. And also, Peter was at his new location.
So again, we had lots of moving parts. So
don't quite know.
So we made some contacts on 10 gigs that weren't overly strong, but they were okay.
Yep. Okay.
We made some contacts on 3.4, and I was pretty impressed with that because I was running 3 watts and Peter was running 30.
Very impressed.
2.4, we didn't have a lot of luck. Peter could hear me. I could hear my voice coming through the phone when I rang him, but I couldn't hear him at all. We were not 100% sure. There was some confusion about dish assembly and grid assembly and stuff. So Peter was going to send me some photos and we're just going to verify. But I'm sure we've worked before, so maybe one of us had a bit of a moment. 1296 we worked, but the first round we couldn't hear them, and I don't really quite know why. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. We worked a few on sort of 270.
Yep.
6 metres.
Yep.
Probably.
I'm in the log.
Yeah, look, it's a shame we need to maybe get the message out there a bit more. There was a few that I sort of spoke to afterwards, and they said, "Oh, was that this weekend?" It's like, yeah. So,
we've been telling you about this all this time.
So maybe we need to have it on the broadcast a bit more, or we need to. But look, we had an absolutely fantastic day weather-wise. It was really, really good. Look, if you can go up on Mount Wellington and get up there at 10 o'clock in the morning and leave at 5 or 6 o'clock at night and have no wind and it's sun and be actually peeling clothes off, then my goodness gracious.
Truly.
On a side note, we had a guy call in. Murray might be able to let me know his call sign, but a VK2 fellow stopped by.
Oh yeah, okay. On his way up the mountain.
He came up and of course he's like spotted all the stickers. He's like, so what are you guys up to? And he's like whipped out a QSL card and sort of plonked it down. So
there you go.
Yeah, so it was pretty good. Had a couple of others sort of called past and wondered what we were trying to do, and then asked us if we didn't have a telephone. You guys not have a phone? But
mate.
But look, it seriously amazes me how much traffic is on that, and it's a nice day.
No, correct.
It's just
everyone
super,
heads up there.
super busy. Yeah,
so, yeah.
But
yep.
No, look, it was a really good day. So
cool.
I can only encourage more people to be portable and go out and do some things.
Do the stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, The other thing that I thought
The other thing.
The other thing was,
Look at us go.
I am an opportunistic type of guy. Now, the John Moyle Memorial. Now I don't know why it's doing that. It was doing that earlier. Anyway, some would say bloody iPhone, but anyway, that's another story.
My lips are sealed.
Ooh. Now,
That's young Eric.
Richard was one of the ones who made his way up to Ross to the Meet the Voice, and we've got the recipient of the sewing machine award, which is the Sewing Circle Net's annual award for the most loquacious amateur in Tasmania for the previous year. The person who handed it to Eric and chose Eric was Graham VK7GS from Mount Roland. And Eric VK7EV was the happy recipient and a bit emotional recipient actually. I think
he was pretty touched with that, which is good.
Very touched with that. So the award, which is a very nice hue and pine Tasmania, made by Max Hardstaff, who is unfortunately silent key, but did a fantastic job of making the hue and pine Tasmania, which has all the names etched onto it, laser etched onto it. So so there you go. And that's actually the Northern crew in the background. So from right to left is Idris, Stefan and Andre. I got them to stand behind Eric, so there you go. So now there is there's a few others that were standing around. There's Peter and Eric VK7EK. There's Eric receiving it. Oh, there's Graham giving it to him, shaking his hand. There's Graham. And there's Shirley, VK7HSC I mentioned earlier. So now Roscoe, VK7ALH and Graham, and some likely looking lads here.
Shady characters.
And in fact, Bryan here, Bryan Watson, VK7KWB, KWB, that's right. Alan, AN. There's Tricky. There's a likely looking lad. Mike VK7DMH, who was up at Ross with the jazz as well, so he nicked across here, and I think he told his wife he was going to the toilet, but anyway, that's another story.
Where you been?
Jeff VK7GW from St Helens, he was in the middle of grape harvest, so he was absolutely stuffed. And there's Roscoe again there. So
it was good to get there. There wasn't many there this year, which is a bit of a shame. But
bit of pre-loved equipment from Bryan there, and I'll show you a little bit of pre-loved equipment in a sec. So
what's the name was there too?
Bryan.
Frank had a bit of pre-loved.
Oh, Frank,
well,
DX. So Frank was there with his.
We need to go and do some more work on his antenna, I think.
Yeah, maintenance job, warranty job. I was told.
Yeah.
Oh, now sorry. Damn. Just to show you. Now we did cast your mind back. It seems so long ago. This is the Smith chart exercise that we did last time to find the matching network for 30 metres. Now somewhere here. Here we are. I bet you that's going to bloody do it again, isn't it? Well, okay, that's all right. Let's.
Yeah, decent phone, I suppose.
Oh, for God's sake. And it's upside down. So now I put the matching network together, and in fact, if I go, there we go. Now the matching network that I showed you had a 330 puff capacitor, and the inductor that I'd wound that was about the right inductance. Now, when I plugged this all in and did it with the NanoVNA, it was not quite where I wanted it to be. Capacitor was a bit high, so okay, I experimented a little bit. What I ended up with was, this is a 200 puff ceramic, and I also put, there's a little variable capacitor just sitting next to it that enables me to, I think it was about 100 puff, up to 100 puff. So, in doing that, where's my thingo here? We go back to, and so of course the variable capacitor let me adjust it just a little bit, and guess what? That dot right there is at the 50 ohm point, and it's 1.1 to 1.
Wow.
So, all I'm indicating here is that little exercise that we did came up with something very close to what you wanted, and the little variable capacitor in here enabled me to
just tweak it a little bit.
To tweak it to absolutely 1 to 1. So, so that's
it's always nice when the instruments agree with the math and
well,
the theory.
Spot on, absolutely spot on. So that's the outcome of our little exercise. I am intending to do a little bit more with Sim Smith, the program, the computer program that I showed. This manual exercise is a whole lot easier to do on the little computer program, the Sim Smith program. So intending to do a little bit more to show you what you can do with Smith charts. Because they are absolutely wonderful devices. Now, I mentioned that I got some show and tell. Now, if I reach over here,
Earlier.
one I picked earlier. Bryan, I noticed on his pre-loved stand, had one of these. Now, for those who don't know, this is a vacuum variable capacitor. So, this is these are concentric rings in the top and the bottom that mesh together in a glass envelope that is evacuated. So it is actually a vacuum seal. That's why the copper inside is absolutely bright and shiny, because it's in a vacuum. And there is a shaft, and then there's some bellows here at the bottom that expand and contract as the capacitor rings go in and out of each other. It's about a 5 to 200 picofarad at many thousands of volts. You connect, this is one end of the capacitor, and this top hat is the other end of the capacitor. So that's one set of plates, that's the other set of plates that you bolt to here. And then there's a shaft that comes out which must have some very impressive glands or something in there to maintain
to maintain
vacuum.
a vacuum, yeah.
So there's a shaft that comes out the bottom, and what Bryan's done is there's a little universal coupler here, and then there is a bit of threaded rod that this little arrangement, this little flange here, moves up and down, and then there's a couple of little micro switches here, limit switches that are in here. And there's a very nice little 12-volt motor with a gearbox that runs into here. So and it all works very nicely. So this is my foray into magnetic loop antennas, because I've been
those to do the tuning.
well and truly. So I'm right at the moment, and what I might do is we're at an hour and 13. So I'll leave it until next week. But there is an absolutely wonderful program and a few other things that enable the visualization of magnetic loops, and so it enables you to do some change the characteristics of the magnetic loop, the diameter, the size, the diameter of the actual material, and a whole lot of other elements, and it shows you what's happening to the efficiency, the bandwidth, etc., etc., etc. So fantastic little program that enables you just to say, well, okay, if I double the diameter of the loop, what does that actually do to the antenna and all of this sort of thing. So I'll leave that until next week, because I'm going through trying to find out what the optimum design is for, in this case, 30 metres. I actually want it for 30 metres. It'll be rotatable.
Nice.
So yeah, and this is of course the big advantage with magnetic loops is you can make them quite small physically, and if you get everything right and get low ohmic losses and everything tuned up and whatever else, some of the stories about magnetic loops competing with, you know, multi-element beams and all sorts of things are pretty impressive. So I'm hoping it lives up to its hype.
Impressive to see.
So yeah, so watch this space. Now, just very quickly, first Wednesday night in April, which is actually in 2 weeks' time.
Preso night.
In 2 weeks'
Mr.
time.
Johns.
So is Mr. Johns, Andrew Johns, who's giving us a bit of a day in the life of a broadcast audio technician for some of the
That would be super cool.
the biggest sporting events that are held in Australia, and the very impressive kit that comes with them. And then, of course, on the 7th of May is our, you will have seen if you've been noticing on Facebook and a few other areas, lots of advertising going out around the virtual conference. So, and we hinted on Rex is one of those people. I'll give you some very nice insight into his time as director of the Antarctic Division. So there you go. So next week, I am doing a segment on interference from Class D amplifiers. I keep advertising it and not doing it, but I guarantee it will be next week.
Chuffy's champing at the bit.
Correct. He keeps reading saying he's going to do it, and what does he do? He never bloody does it. Anyway, so anyway. So that's next week. So we've got a few interesting videos for our RF viewers tonight. We've got there's a wonderful video from Hayden VK7HH around his My Amateur Radio Story and Advice for New Hams. So great little video. Some strange signals, and also Colin Firth. For those people who don't know Colin Firth, he is a legend in his own lunchbox on YouTube. Just put in Colin Firth. He's actually a plumber by trade, I understand, but I think he makes most of his money and fame from doing outrageous YouTube videos, like putting pulse jets on bicycles and a few other things. He has dug secret tunnels under his house, and
Not so secret anymore.
not so secret anymore. But anyway, he's this is his latest project, and I thought I'd include that. So anyway,
Cool.
for our RF viewers. Anyway, that was this is VK7OTC, the club station, the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters night, and we'll bid you 73. Thank you, Richard,
Thank you, Justin.
and we'll see you next time. 73.
73.
Thanks, Justin. VK7RM.
Oh, VK7RM, VK7OTC. Thanks, Ron. Hope you got something out of it.
Was good. See you Sunday.
No problems. Cheers. VK7OTC clear. What am I doing here? What's my name? What am I doing?